Hello everyone, welcome to Connecting People, Changing Lives. This is Caren Glasser and I'm here with my amazing cohort and co-host, Nancy Ferrari. How are you this morning, Nancy? Good morning.
Good morning. So happy it's Thursday. I just love our show and connecting with you and sharing our guests with everyone else. And I was up at 5:30. I shared with her earlier. I was just very excited to actually see Holli Kenley, who is with us today, and she's just a trailblazer. She was on a Good Morning show out in Arizona, did a phenomenal job. So we're so blessed to have her with us. And with that said, I do want to share that I've known Holli for about 3 years. She's been on my show. I've read her books and truly inspired with each and everything she says, everything she writes. So without further ado, I do want to share a little bit about Holli Kenley before we go into talking about our fabulous topics today. Holli Kenley holds a master's degree in psychology. She's a California state licensed teacher and a California licensed marriage and family therapist, counseling with teens, adults, and couples. Holli's areas of training and experience include sexual trauma, abuse, addiction, codependency, domestic violence, betrayal, and cyberbullying. Currently, Holli works in the field of psychology as an author, speaker, and workshop presenter. She has authored numerous published articles in 5 books, and she is going to be sharing her newest book, which is her very first novel. And if you are a fan of Holli and you know her books, this is just an absolute delight. This is her book right here, Another Way, which was just released. And I love the book. I love the cover. It's so endearing. So this time I would love to warmly welcome you, Holli Kenley, to our show.
Caren and Nancy, thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to having a conversation today about worth, connecting people to their worth, and hopefully changing their lives, making a little bit of a shift today.
I've been so excited because the whole concept of worth, I posted, I don't know, a couple months ago on all of my social media platforms, the words, know your worth. And I did that as much for me as it was for my entire community, because I am challenged by that, and I work on that every single day to know my worth. So let's talk about the word worth. Where does it come from, and how does it play out in so many different people's lives?
Thank you, Caren. Worth, we know, is an emotion. It's a feeling. It's an abstract concept. And one of the interesting things I think about worth is that we don't really pay attention to it until it goes up or till it goes down. And so it's just kind of this fluid emotion. And again, until we're really feeling really good and feeling our worth is strong, we notice it, or as I said, the reverse is true as well. And what I know for myself as a young girl is that I didn't have a strong sense of self-worth. And there were several reasons for that. I was very shy and introverted. I was the second of 4 daughters, and so I was kind of that peacemaker in an environment that I perceived as being rather unsteady and unstable and not real secure. My birthday fell late in the year in November, and so I was always kind of lagging behind from my classmates socially and physically. So I didn't have a strong sense of self-worth, and there's a lot of other things that contribute to that too. However, early on, and this is one of the important message I want to get across today as we're talking, and our visual audience as well, is that I made this connection because I was introduced to music very early on in my childhood, that if I invested into music, which I did because I found it safe, I found it a secure source of investment, that it gave back to me. And it really, with the accolades and the recognition and the awards that I got, is that I found that my self-worth really grew and that I could cultivate that. And it's something that I return to over and over again throughout my life. And even though I took many detours in my life, and I learned from those detours, is that early on I kind of, again, returned back to that internal compass, if you will, of self-worth, and knew that I had a choice about what I invested in and what I didn't invest in, and that I had power over that. In other words, I could choose to either augment or enhance my worth, or I could choose not to. So I really connected with the power of self-worth early on in my life.
I have to assume that it's different for different ages and different time in our lives between the adolescents and teenagers and adults. How does that all, does it just take a natural course, or is it affected by outside? How does that change?
Oh, this is a great question, Karen. Thank you. Worth is different for all of us, but it's very different, especially for children and youth, and for adults. And the way I like to explain it is that because of youth and children and their developmental stage, they're wanting to belong, they're wanting to feel accepted, feel loved and liked and fit in and all of that because of those developmental stages. And so they look outward for their sources of worth. That's just natural. And kind of in psychology terms, we say that's an external locus of control. They look outward externally. So they want to do what everybody else is doing. They want to wear what everybody else is wearing, listen to what everybody else listens to, all that kind of thing. Again, to fit in, to feel accepted, to feel like they belong. As we grow and mature, what we learn as adults with our rational, intuitive part of our brain as well, is that we turn more inward to our internal sources of worth. And this is what I was talking about a little bit ago, is that we want to look at, yes, external things are important. Of course, they have an influence on us. And I want to share an example of something in just a minute. But we look at our interpersonal qualities and characteristics, our faith, our beliefs, our values, our practices, our principles, our reputation, our integrity. Those qualities that we know are important not only personally but professionally, and we default back to those. Now, the big difference between not only between youth and adults with that is that youth also have in their reason and their logical part of their brain, the prefrontal cortex of their brain, develops last. It doesn't really fully develop until about age 25. The back part of their brain, the subcortical part, which regulates emotion and feeling and response to reward, develops first. So when they're put in a socially charged situation, whatever it might be, and wanting to belong and have hormones raging, they're not going to think logically. They're going to respond to reward. So when we tell them to walk away from something, when we tell them to say no to something, it's contrary to their being. And so it is very different. And that's why, in another way, I wanted to give them a process for which to discover, determine, and define their worth.
Gosh, I love what you just shared, and what as I've read your book a couple times, I highly recommend it to not only teens but to parents as well. And a couple of things that were stirring within me as I was reading that, as you're sharing that, especially tweens and teenagers, they don't want to talk to their parents. However, having raised 3 children, what was my goal and my aspiration is to always stay in communication with my children. And so how do you speak to that, as far, because especially like with schools, teachers are not there to parent. So I've always said it starts in the home with the values, the self-worth, on and on. But then what happens along the way because statistics know, and I know you know them, that 25% will actually go to one of their parents to talk about it, where 75% won't.
Yes.
So how do we tackle that?
That's a great question too, Nancy. And one of the things that I've always shared with parents, whether as a teacher in my first career and then as a therapist, is it's always easier if you use another source as a point of at least initiating the conversation. I was just talking to a gentleman a couple weeks ago on his show, and he told me, he said he's from New Jersey, and he said, I never really did like that show Jersey Shore. He said, however, my daughter wanted to see it. What we did, and she was, I think, in middle school or getting into high school at that time, is we watched the show, and then we talked about it afterwards. So whether it's a TV show, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, of course, I would like it to be another way, and that the audience isn't just for tweens to teens, but it is for parents to pick up another way and to talk about the characters in it. Talk about Chloe and the choices that she's making and why she's making healthy choices and how is she doing that. How is it that Amanda Hill, who's another important character in the book, who seems to have a pretty good compass as far as her upbringing and the direction she's going, compromises her worth really so quickly and so readily in the relationship that she gets into with Blair Stevens. Talk about Tyrell Fields, who was raised by a single mom and his grandmother, who's had a really hard time of it up until 8th grade. And how is it that he changed that he started tapping into his worth, defining it, determining it, and getting on a road that is really making choices based upon his worth and levels of readiness, and it's really serving him well. So use those characters to drive the conversation. Young people are much more willing to talk about another person or another character than themselves. And in the back of the book, that's why I deliberately put in a whole set of book club questions. And on my website, I put conversation starters centered around the storyline. It's safe, it's comfortable, and this is so important. One conversation is not going to do it. They need to start the conversation and they need to continue it.
So how does this correlate or intersect with, and I saw the photograph on your wall about bullying. How does this all come together? Because I have to make an assumption right now that if you don't know your worth, that you can either be the bully or the bullier, or the one who's being bullied. How does this all play out in that aspect? Because I saw the picture up on your wall also, it's the bully.
Yes, thank you, Karen. And I do bring up in another way in the storyline a sexting incident, which we know is so common. This isn't true for everyone, of course. In psychology, we don't deal in absolutes, obviously. It's science and healing blended together. What I have found, not only as a teacher, but in my practice as a therapist, is that when somebody has a strong sense of worth, and again, it's finding out what contributes to that, what's important to you, they typically choose or they make decisions that are going to enhance, augment, sustain, and maintain that. And even if they don't, that they learn from that and they're able to pick themselves back up and continue doing it. If that core worth is really built on things that are important to them. On the other hand, if an individual doesn't have a strong sense of worth, they don't feel valuable, they don't feel that they matter, that they usually choose to make decisions not based on worth because there's not a lot of worth there, but out of need, out of want, out of void. And so as they choose a partner, as they choose to get involved with a group that might either be being bullies or being socially active or risky and whatever the behaviors might be, that what's happening is they're really trying to just fill those voids, serve those needs, and get those needs met. Which in turn then, the outcome of that can be much more detrimental. They can be victimized, they can be bullied, they can be lots of other antisocial kinds of behaviors. And what does that do then? That again depletes their worth even further. So it's really kind of a cyclical relationship.
Right.
And the important message, Karen and Nancy, as I'm trying to get across in the book and when I'm speaking about it, is that anywhere in that cyclical relationship, we have the power to change that. A young person who doesn't feel that he or she matters can change that. And getting back more to the cyberbullying thing, Karen, is that there's a quote in chapter 7 or chapter 5 from Rick, the youth pastor who's leading these sessions on Another Way, that says, you matter, and you need to be brave enough to hear that and receive that. And then it starts with respecting yourself first.
Now,
and moving forward from there.
You talk about 3 key strategies that are presented in the lessons of Another Way for defining and determining worth. Can we go through some of those?
Yes, yeah, we absolutely can, and I may have you do a bit with me on this if you're willing. Okay. First of all, as we said, worth is an abstract concept, and so not only for youth, but for adults too, as a cognitive behavioral therapist, we want to make this concrete. We as adults, when we have a goal, we have an action plan. We just don't go out and do it. So if we're going to tackle our worth, we want to make it tangible. We want to make it concrete. So in Another Way, I have circles for girls, and I have like a chart, a code of conduct chart for males, but they don't have to be gender specific. But we're going to use the circles for us, okay, as we go through this. So the first thing that's really important to do is to pause and to discover our worth, which means to name it. So I'd like you to make a circle, just to draw a circle or put it in your head if you want. And I'd like you to put down a couple of things that are important to you, not only professionally, but also interpersonally. It could be relationships, it could be friendships, it could be your business, it could be your honesty, your integrity, your show. Put down 2 or 3 things that are important to you. And what we're doing here is we're naming them. We're identifying them and naming and saying, you know what, this is what is important to me, because these things that are important to me are what contribute to my worth. Okay, Nancy, what are a couple of things that you put down?
Right in the middle is integrity. That's everything, and under that will fall honesty, credibility, truthfulness, and all that. And around them, I put relationships, which refer to my family, my friends, people who come into my life. And then on the other side is my business, because that's got a whole different energy to it. It's how I present that out to be in service to others, people who come, and whether they're colleagues or clients, they're all within that sphere of integrity, that we're in alignment with one another. Okay. And that's how I define my worth.
Okay, beautiful. Karen, a couple of things that you put down.
Ditto. I wrote down, and this is why Nancy and I are doing the show together. I wrote down integrity first. That was the very first word that came, and then relationships were the next one. So it's very much the same. Integrity. If I cannot look myself in the mirror and be happy with what I see, and I don't mean physically, I mean the whole entity, then I'm not living within my own integrity. And relationships are the most important thing after integrity, because I don't think you can have real relationships if you are not integrous, in your relationships. So both of those things did the same thing.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. The next, so getting individuals, youth and adults in touch with what's really important, and I think it's just so powerful to write them down and to look at that and see that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to determine our worth. I was trying to stay with D words, and so, so then the next circle you're going to draw is called your investment circle, and we're actually going to draw 2 circles. Your current investment circle, and then over to the side of it is your new investment circle, and we'll just leave that for a minute. Your current investment circle, you're going to look at the things that you put into your worth circle, and you're going to ask yourself presently, currently, is what I'm doing, is how much of myself I'm investing into these different things that I'm saying are important to me. Is that reflective of its level of importance? And is it reflective of the return that I want to receive from it? So this is your current truth. So let's say, Nancy, you put on their relationships, okay? And so in that circle, kind of, and you can have overlap here, what percentage of your circle are you giving to those? And energy, your time, your financial support, all of that kind of thing. And is that what you want to be doing? And is that giving you the kind of return that you want on that investment? Now, if it isn't, that's okay, because that's what the new circle is going to be about. Let me tell you something that I've come across talking, especially to baby boomers, is that they, of course, their families are important, their children are important. But many times they say to me, Holly, you know what, I'm investing a tremendous amount in my adult children. There's kind of a codependency piece there going on. And what I'm noticing is that I'm not getting, and of course you do it because you want to and all of that, but I notice that it's depleting me. I notice it's draining me, that it's not contributing to my worth and to my integrity as a mom, as an adult, and as where I want to be in my life. So then what we do over to the new investment circle, once we've done that analysis over here, is say, what can I change? How do I want to start to rearrange, to shore up and set some limits, some boundaries, if you will, some definition onto these kinds of investment over here. So this is what's so important about these two circles, again, is that many times we found out it is not reflective of what we see as important. Can I go back to the book for just a second?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sure.
Okay, Amanda Hill, again, who's one of the main characters, because we do this in relationships a lot, is why I'm bringing her up. So her core values are important, her faith is important, her purity is important to her. She chooses to become very involved intimately, physically, and so on with her boyfriend, Blair Stevens. Now, she chooses that. She's not forced. She likes the feelings that she gets from it. There's a return on that investment for her at first. Then after a while, she kind of feels as the relationship starts to fall apart and she feels used and depleted and taken advantage of, and she's compromised her core worth. She then begins to feel her self-worth, her esteem, her value, her level of mattering go down. And so, and this takes place throughout the story, when she comes out the other end, though, she says, okay, now what do I do? I'm understanding, I'm learning from that lesson. I now want to move ahead and I want to change how I want to start investing or not investing into intimate relationships.
Powerful. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you were thinking, Nancy, as you were talking specifically about relationships and your children and adult children in particular. Nancy and I have had these conversations. I have an adult child, even the way I say it. I have a young adult person in my world who's going to be 30, and sometimes I feel like he's sucking the life out of me, because I am so invested in that relationship, and I'm just loving how I'm taking notes, and I'm going to go back and listen to this again, because it is really powerful what you just said and how to really look at it in a brand new light. So thank you.
Yes, agreed there. And Holly, I have one word for that, is brilliant in the way you explained it, but also so thought-provoking, and a thought that was, when we first started, is that how these feelings show up in our adult life. What have we compromised? And if we never felt we had any power, because I'm all about taking your power back, like you said, we have the power of choice. And the more, what I've learned is the more you say these words and the more you invest, like I'm 100% invested in me. And there's no coincidence we're having this conversation, because on the fly I did a video this morning. Karen encourages me to utilize my media sources, but I just felt inspired to do so. And I'm actually feeling a lot more higher vibration right now, because I'm reminded of what I had given away, from early on in my life, and not even known how much I have. And that's what I know through another way. You are gifting to the world. And my gosh, Holly, I've got the shivers. Just so important in this, as we're watching so much strife going on in the world right now. And I know we've all seen it when we saw that mother go and grab her son in Baltimore. Now, that is not the way that we really wanted to be parenting, but you know what? I felt her fury, and that, no, you are not doing that. And I saw their interview on CNN last night separately, and it was so funny because he said, when I saw my mom, it was World War III. I knew it. But you know what? She loved him enough to go that far. And she goes, I didn't know there were videos on. I just knew what I had to do in the moment.
Right.
She was in that code red moment. That's my boy, and I'm not going to let him succumb to the peer pressure of it all. And that was a great message.
And I'm looking at the clock, and I realize that we're rapidly running out of time. Holly, will you commit to coming back on the show with us again? Because there is so much to be talking about here that we need to make sure that we have enough time to do this justice. I know that our listeners are going, wait, there's so much more we want to learn. There is one more question I would like to ask you to kind of, as we start to go towards the end of our show, and that is, what about individuals who couldn't even do that exercise? I mean, they couldn't even put anything down. Where do they start? What would you suggest they do first? And obviously, the second thing I'm going to suggest is, well, obviously, you want to connect with Holli Kenley because she's going to help you. But what would you just suggest right now as to what they, the dogs are howling over here, as to what they should do? Can you give us just a couple of things that maybe can lead them in the right direction?
Yes, and thank you, Karen, because I being a therapist and dealing with this kind of thing over and over again, is that there's several different venues or avenues to reach someone so they can begin to connect with their worth. And a couple of things that I would say is, one is that if you can grab hold of the concept that you matter, and that is your choice. You make that choice right this minute that you matter. I know it helps if there's encouragement. Get a copy of Another Way. There's a lot of encouragement there. Number two is to tap into a spiritual, religious, cultural, ethnic norm, foundation, principle, belief, something that has resonated with you. And Rick talks about this in Chapter 5. Tether yourself to a foundational principle, practice, belief, something that even it could be words that your grandmother spoke to you, that an ancestor left you, but tap into that. When I work with clients who are traumatized, abused, this is usually where I start, is finding one piece that they can connect with. And then also,
I like that too.
Cooper liked that one.
What I'd like to just close with this, Karen. My first 10 years of teaching, in the back of my room I had a banner, and that banner said, respect, you have to give it to get it. Right. And that was a message to me, not to my students, is that I have to give it to them in order to give it back. And what I learned over the years is that the same is true, is that I have to give it to myself first. Right. In order to give it back. And again, in Another Way, I show you how, because every day, whatever we do, we are sending messages to other people about our worth. Everything we do. And so, and again, in Another Way, I show them how to start that respect. Chapter 7 is huge on forgiveness, how to forgive yourself, how to forgive others, and how to forgiving yourself time to pause, look inward, and start to cultivate that seed of worth, because it is there.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Nancy, any last words before we say goodbye? And of course, we're going to send everyone to Holly, and there'll be notes in the run sheets.
Yes, well, absolutely, we will have you back on, Holly. There's so much more that we can expand upon, but you have sent some powerful messages, and I know I have witnessed people when someone has said, you matter, the tears just come down because they have never felt that. And I hope that our viewers were moved to go inward with that and knowing that everyone matters. And so bless you, Holly. I am so excited for you to keep sharing your gifts with the world, and the world is a better place with you in it. So thank you so much for being with us this morning.
And I thank you as well, Holly, and I want to encourage all of our listeners and our viewers to read the run sheets directly below. There's going to be a link to your book. There will also be a link to your website, hollikenley.com, where they can go and actually get some cool stuff from you once they get into the website. So I encourage you to do that as well. And also just, you're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you for coming back. And I want to thank our viewers. We know that you have choices as to how you spend your time, and you chose to spend it with us today. And we are forever appreciative of that. So we look forward to seeing you next week on the next episode of Connecting People, Changing Lives. Goodbye, everyone.